His heart is tethered to his unattainable first love. Mine is buried in business. 2 years into our marriage, we remain complete strangers under the same roof. I check my calendar and deliver the routine update. I have a charity gala tonight. I'll be attending with the investors, so that shouldn't be an issue for you, right? His tone is flat, disinterested. Fine. According to the contract, I won't interfere with your schedule. Suddenly, a stream of text scrolls across my vision, like comments from a live broadcast. Why is he still putting on such a pathetic act? The guy is clearly rotting with jealousy. He's going to be home sobbing the second his husband walks out the door. Says he won't interfere, yet he's practically vibrating with the urge to do exactly that. God, I hate how quickly I figured this out. Pierce, look at your husband. Don't let the cold shoulder act fool you. He's a total simp. He'd do whatever you asked if you just pushed him. I narrow my eyes, glancing at the man. His face is a blank slate, the very picture of composure, but his fingers are digging so hard into the leather of the sofa that the fabric is practically shredding. I was raised to be the sole heir of the Cunningham family. I learned to be cold, calculating, and ruthless. Everyone assumed I would present as an alpha. It was treated as a mathematical certainty. When the official report came back labeled Omega, the entire room went silent. The elders looked like they'd swallowed a gallon of bile. I, however, couldn't have cared less. A biological designation doesn't rewrite my education or my capacity for decision-making. I was still the one running the Cunningham empire. When the firm's cash flow hit a wall and we were hovering on the brink of bankruptcy, I stopped at nothing to pull us back from the edge, including a strategic marriage. The candidate was Conrad Russell. Our professional styles were mirrors of each other, though he was far more famous for being a hopeless romantic. He was a man who kept himself pure for his unattainable first love, refusing to even look at an Omega. Anyone who tried to plant a trophy partner in his orbit usually ended up professionally ruined. I approached the Russell family with the proposal purely as a test, never expecting a genuine answer. To my shock, he agreed almost immediately. In hindsight, it made perfect sense. He was constantly nagged by his family to marry, and he was surrounded by vultures waiting for a weakness. He needed a quiet, invisible shield, someone to play the part of a spouse, until his first love finally returned. I was the perfect candidate. I had zero interest in his personal drama. It was strictly a business acquisition. To protect both our interests, I drafted a prenuptial agreement. A formal marriage, separate lives, no interference as long as neither of us committed a crime or tarnished the company's reputation. We were clear. If either of us needed a divorce for a reasonable cause, the other would cooperate without a fight. Conrad read that document for a long time, likely hunting for hidden traps. Once he confirmed the terms, he signed it with a flick of his wrist and arranged the wedding with his trademark cold, high-speed efficiency. After the vows, we stuck to the script. We slept in separate rooms, practiced mutual respect, and lived as ghosts to one another. When we were forced to appear in public, we performed like the ultimate power couple, all smiles and touch. Behind closed doors, we were just two roommates who barely knew each other's habits. I never expected that while confirming my itinerary tonight, I'd be forced to read the thoughts of an invisible audience. Ugh, seriously? 2 years of marriage and he is still playing it cool. Would it kill him to just offer to go with his husband? That is just how he is. He acts like everything is fine, but in his head, he has already shredded every alpha standing near his husband into pieces. Stop roasting him. He is just terrified that if he says too much, he will push him away. Besides, he is already sleeping in the guest room, close enough to smell him but unable to touch. Cut the guy some slack. Wait, how do I tag him so he actually sees this? I have seen people ruin their relationships because they don't communicate, but these two? They have managed to kill every spark of romance just by being emotionally constipated. Absolute legends. I looked at Conrad Russell with suspicion. His expression was as steady as a rock, as if none of this had anything to do with him. However, the leather sofa beneath him had a deep, unmistakable indentation where his fingers were digging into the upholstery. If he used any more force, he would tear right through the hide. This guy, Was he jealous? I hesitated before asking, "Is there anything you want to say?" At the sound of my voice, he closed his laptop and replied with a polite, detached air, "Nothing at all. Do you need me to have the driver take you?" The live stream comments flooded in again, calling him a fool and saying he deserved exactly what he was getting. My phone buzzed a message from Jameson Ford. He was already downstairs. Time was tight. If I didn't leave now, I would be late for the charity gala. I didn't have time to overthink it, so I grabbed my blazer and reached for my shoes. "No, that's fine. Jameson is already here to pick me up." Conrad merely nodded. He didn't say a word. Look at him now. A broken-hearted puppy. The moment his husband walks out the door, he is going to want to tear the whole house down. Let him suffer, he asked for this. En route to the gala, I was still chewing over the validity of those scrolling comments. To be fair, I admired Conrad Russell's business acumen. But that was where the admiration began and ended. We'd never had much of a rapport. Was he really into me? And if so, since when? I hadn't sensed a thing. My internal monologue was cut short by a cold water bottle pressing against my cheek. Lost in thought? You look tense. Need a drink? I took the bottle from Jameson Ford and cracked it open. Just zoning out, that's all. Back when I was orchestrating our marriage, securing a new investor was my second line of defense to save the Cunningham legacy. Jameson was that investor. He was a high-profile alpha, with a shark's eye for profit and an extensive Rolodex. He was easygoing, charming, and we had hit it off immediately, transitioning into a comfortable friendship. Tonight's charity gala was his doing. He'd promised to introduce me to an industry legend who could open doors to some serious revenue. Once inside, Jameson made the introductions, then gracefully stepped back to let us talk shop. We were deep in the middle of a promising discussion when the older man's gaze suddenly flickered toward the entrance. His eyebrows shot up. "Well, look at that. Isn't that Conrad Russell?" I froze. I turned around. Standing there, drink in hand, wearing a suit that hugged his frame with expensive clinical precision, was none other than Conrad. What was he doing here? The scrolling commentary flared in my peripheral vision. LMAO, the alpha finally couldn't help himself. He's out here tracking his husband like a lost puppy. Why'd you wait so long, bro? When his husband is around, he acts like a cold-blooded shark. When he's not, he's a paparazzi. Pretends he doesn't care about your schedule, but he's terrified someone else will move in on his territory. Had to find an excuse to stalk him, didn't you? Do something. Go stand next to him. Stop acting. We can all see him looking at you. Conrad caught my gaze, then strode over, his expression schooled into polite indifference. Albert, he greeted. Well, look who it is. It's been a minute, kid. I missed your wedding due to a trip abroad, but I've been meaning to catch up. Where's your partner? Did he come with you? I held my breath. Conrad's eyes flicked to mine. I cleared my throat, stepped closer, and hooked my arm firmly through his. I offered a professional, polished smile. Albert, it's a pleasure. I'm his spouse. Conrad didn't miss a beat. He slid an arm around my waist, his hold firm and practiced, exactly as he did for the cameras during our public appearances. Someone's trying way too hard not to grin. The cool guy act is finally paying off. Only way he can get some skin-to-skin time with his husband, right? Was he happy? I searched his face, but found only the standard formulaic smile he wore for social functions, not a flicker of genuine emotion. But his grip on my waist tightened, the heat of his palm seeping through the fabric of my shirt like a brand. Conrad was a natural in this environment. Within minutes, he had Albert roaring with laughter. When the conversation finally wrapped up, Albert clapped Conrad on the shoulder and excused himself, claiming he didn't want to interrupt our quality time. As soon as he walked away, I didn't pull back, and Conrad didn't let go. I took stock of the situation. I had already achieved my goal for the evening, but with my husband standing right here, it would be awkward to abandon him to hunt down Jameson. Besides, Jameson was currently surrounded by a flock of socialites vying for his attention. I weighed my options. Did you bring an assistant? Conrad never brought anyone without status or purpose to these events. He only dealt with beta assistants. "No," he said, his voice flat. "That left just the two of us. Jameson looked busy enough, and I could always apologize over drinks another night." "Fine," I said, leaning into him slightly. "Let's stick together. We should at least look like we're on the same page for the cameras." Conrad Russell and I put on a masterclass in domestic bliss. In the face of everyone's envious glances and empty praise, we navigated the social currents with practiced ease. But, as the banquet finally drew to a close and we prepared to head out, Jameson Ford stepped forward, offering to drop me off. I cast a sidelong glance at Conrad. Even without the live stream comments constantly feeding me his inner monologue, the way his knuckles were turning white tight enough to snap bone made it painfully obvious that he wasn't having a good time. According to the scroll of comments, he was currently drowning in a pool of his own petty jealousy. It was almost comical, really, that such a deep-seated, simmering resentment was masked by that permanent, "don't approach me" scowl of his. "No need," I said, offering Jameson a polite, dismissive smile. "Since Conrad is already here, I'll head home with him." There was no point in taking two cars to the same destination. Jameson opened his mouth to argue, but Conrad didn't give him the chance. He stepped between us, effectively cutting the man off, and dialed the driver. "Ronald," he barked into the phone, his voice cold enough to freeze glass. "Get the car to the curb, now." Once inside the vehicle, we sat side by side in the back seat. Conrad folded his hands neatly over his knees, closed his eyes, and retreated into a wall of silence. When he isn't speaking, Conrad carries an aura of sharp, calculated lethality, the kind of edge honed by years of commanding boardrooms. At first glance, it's intimidating, but the live stream comments were currently blowing up with the revelation that he was actually agonizing over how to initiate a conversation with his spouse, desperately wishing he could just cuddle and be affectionate instead. I stared at his profile for a long time, trying to find a shred of evidence to support that claim. I couldn't spot a single crack in his stoic armor. Suddenly, his eyes snapped open. "Are you in your heat?" I blinked, caught off guard. "I don't think so. It's not the right time. Probably just the scent of the perfume clinging to me." "Oh." With that single syllable, he shut his mouth again, his expression as cold and distant as a stranger's on a commute. The live stream comments were practically screaming at him to just say something, anything. I decided to take the initiative. "Is there anything you wanted to talk about?" Conrad turned his head, his eyes flickering with a faint, hopeful light. We stared at each other for a long, uncomfortable moment. "Are you tired?" he finally asked. "If you are, you can sleep. We're still 30 minutes away." Usually when someone asks if I'm tired, I translate that as, "Please stop talking." "Right, sure. I'll take a nap then." I am genuinely losing my mind. This is the first time he's tried to talk to him, and he tells him to go to sleep? He deserves to be single for another 2 years. How am I even still watching this? The guy has less emotional intelligence than a golden retriever. Someone please. I need to jump through the screen and force them to kiss already. Spending every night alone in that massive bed without his spouse is the only punishment he deserves. I cracked one eye open just enough to glance at him. He had his fists clenched so tightly they were trembling. He looked like he wanted to punch himself into next week. As soon as I got home, I went straight to the sofa. Sure enough, there were several deep gashes on the expensive leather, crinkled and jagged, an eyesore. Anyone who didn't know better would think a cat had been sharpening its claws on it. Conrad Russell really has quite the grip. How jealous must he have been? To test if the live stream comments were right about him being putty in my hands, I decided to put him to work. "It wasn't something I usually did. I'm a bit thirsty. Could you pour me a glass of water?" He agreed instantly and brought a glass over without a second of hesitation. After taking it, I added, "It's cold in here. Can you grab me a blanket?" Without a word, he marched into the master bedroom and shook out a brand new, monogrammed throw. "The water's a bit tepid. Can you add some hot water to it?" After 5, 6, 7, 8 requests, almost all of them deliberately difficult, Conrad still didn't show a hint of impatience. If anything, I caught a flicker of excitement in his movements. He seemed genuinely thrilled to be at my beck and call. Well, the live stream comments weren't lying. He likes me. To be honest, Conrad's looks are exactly my type, sharp features and a lean, athletic build. I hadn't considered the possibility before because I knew about his unattainable first love. I'd always assumed this marriage would end in divorce, eventually, anyway. But if he actually likes me, well, perhaps this boring arrangement might get interesting after all. As for the unattainable first love, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Besides, I'm not exactly lacking. If I really want to compete, it's not like I'd lose. After Conrad brought me my 4th cup of tea, I drank half of it under his eager gaze and gave him a perfectly measured smile. Thanks. I'm going to take a shower. While he was still dazed, I strolled into the bathroom. The hot water cascaded over me, and my pores began to open up. Suddenly, a scent hit me. My own pheromones. They were getting stronger by the second. Is my heat starting? That shouldn't be possible. I still had half a month to go. I reached out to turn off the water and grab a towel when a wave of intense vertigo crashed into me. My legs turned to jelly, and I collapsed to the floor with a dull thud, completely caught off guard. The impact was brutal. I lay there for a long time, unable to even catch my breath. Then, the door was shoved open. Pierce? What happened? I was in too much pain to answer. My nostrils were flooded with the smell of my own pheromones. Through the dissipating steam, I felt myself being wrapped in a towel. The heat of a man's body engulfed me, and a raspy, strained voice echoed right against my ear. You're in heat. Conrad Russell scooped me up and carried me to the master bedroom, bundling me into a cocoon with the duvet. With a practiced surgical gentleness, he pulled away the bath towel. How are you holding up? Does it hurt? I sat cross-legged, my head spinning, and shook my head feebly. Not great. I'm burning up. His face darkened, his jaw tightening into a hard line. We'd had a pheromone leak incident once before, and he'd worn that same stern expression back then. I had always assumed he was repulsed by my scent. To be respectful, I usually made sure to take my suppressants well in advance. But this cycle had been erratic, a sudden, violent storm that left me no time to prepare. Holy shit times T! Are we finally getting the mark? Do it! Do it! Do it! Wait, I thought they hadn't reached this part yet. Conrad still thinks Pierce is head over heels for Jameson Ford. If he marks him now, he'll be terrified that Pierce will hate him for it. I have to say, Conrad is such a hopelessly devoted simp. Everyone keeps saying he's just playing a part, but he's just too in love. He knows who Pierce's heart belongs to, so he keeps his distance, stays out of the way, and just swallows his jealousy. He's so damn humble in the way he loves. I blinked, stunned. He thinks I'm in love with Jameson Ford? What an absolute disaster of a misunderstanding. I didn't have a single drop of romantic interest in Jameson beyond our professional partnership. So, Conrad's cold shoulder all those times wasn't disgust, it was him straining against his own instincts, or perhaps agonizing over my comfort. Pierce, just hold on for a second. Where's your medical kit? I'll go find the suppressants. I mulled it over for a heartbeat before shaking my head. There aren't any left. I didn't have time to restock. He was already standing up, moving toward the door. I'll have Ronald Hayes pick some up. No. I caught his sleeve, stopping him from reaching for his phone. I let out a ragged, scorching breath. Conrad, just give me a temporary mark. The air in the room suddenly went dead silent. Conrad's expression went completely blank. That cool, detached mask of his vanished, replaced by an expression of pure, bewildered innocence. He looked like a deer in the headlights. He pointed a finger at his own chest. Me? Then he pointed at me. Mark? You? Has this man's brain completely shut down? If you don't want to, then forget it. Go ahead, call Ronald Hayes for the meds. I'll just have to grit my teeth and ride it out. I bit my lip hard, squeezing my eyes shut as I prepared for the agony to come. 3 seconds later, I felt arms wrap around me. Hot, ragged breathing, brushed against the sensitive skin of my neck. "It's going to hurt a little. Just try to bear it." Teeth punctured my skin. A tidal wave of pheromones flooded into my gland. Jolts of electricity pulsed through my neck, making my entire body shudder. As I trembled, the covers slipped. When his searing palm pressed directly against my bare skin, his breathing hitched. The room grew stifling. It felt like my gland was being torn apart. "Conrad, take it easy." His grip tightened instantly, though his teeth softened, retreating into a gentle graze. Once the temporary mark was finished, his tongue flicked over the raw, sensitized skin. The sensation sent a jolt straight down my spine. Conrad seemed to snap back to reality. He scrambled to pull the blanket back over me, his voice stuttering in a panic. You stay here tonight. I'll go sleep in your room." He wanted to run the second he was done, not on my watch. I grabbed his arm, collapsing bonelessly into his chest. "Don't go. I'm so weak I can barely hold myself up. Just let me lean on you for a bit." The man froze, instantly obedient. His heart hammered against my ear like a war drum, and even through his shirt, I could feel his body temperature spiking. I stared at his bobbing Adam's apple and spoke, my voice dripping with lethargic intent. "Stay here tonight, Conrad. I'm in a vulnerable phase. I need to feel safe." Conrad Russell slept beside me that night. For the first time in our 2-year marriage, we had actually shared a bed. Honestly, I didn't sleep well. Or rather, I hadn't slept at all. When I opened my eyes this morning, the spot beside me was already cold, and the sound of water trickled from the ensuite. I sat up, rubbing my temples. When Conrad walked out, he only had a towel wrapped around his waist. I stared at him, openly and unimpressed, as I spoke. "Did you get food poisoning last night, or is your germophobia acting up again?" "What? All night long you went to the bathroom 3 times, showered 3 times. If I counted correctly, that was your 4th shower in the last 12 hours. Whatever he was trying to work out, he was making a mess of it. Conrad stood there, stunned. Did I wake you?" "Oh, you think?" I kept my tone polite, though. "Not really. But as your spouse, I'm professionally obligated to worry about your health." I leaned back, offering a thin, clinical smile. "Besides, excessive showering ruins your skin's natural lipid barrier. Medically speaking, once a day is more than enough. Conrad." While he was busy turning into a statue of embarrassment, I slipped into the bathroom. I wasn't an idiot. I knew exactly why he was making those trips. A young, hot-blooded alpha, I could understand the struggle. But since he'd ruined my sleep, I didn't mind being a little bit of a headache for him. Consider it my morning entertainment. After freshening up, I went back to the guest room to change. Before leaving, a thought occurred to me. I walked back to the master suite and leaned against the doorframe, watching Conrad as he stared blankly into space, struggling to tie his own necktie. I rapped my knuckles against the wood. "Conrad!" The man, who was clearly 1,000 miles away, looked up. I walked over with effortless grace, swatted his clumsy hands away, and deftly tied a sharp Kelvin knot for him. Seeing his confused puppy-dog expression, I couldn't help but let a smirk tug at the corner of my mouth. "You seem to have some misunderstandings about me." I tightened the tie, meeting his gaze head-on. "I need to clear something up. I don't like Jameson Ford." The man who usually plays the market like a seasoned shark seemed to have completely fried his own brain. He stared at me like a stunned deer in headlights, not even blinking. It's getting late. I'm heading to the office." I reached out, smoothing the lapels of his shirt with practiced, casual ease. "See you tonight." I was 10 minutes late to the office. Jameson Ford was already sitting in my suite, waiting. I offered a quick, apologetic smile and dove straight into the remaining business projections. Mid-sentence, Jameson's expression soured. The air in the room shifted instantly. "Pierce, have you been marked? Could he smell it?" The suppressant patch must have shifted. Alpha pheromones are inherently repulsed by one another. Jameson must have been picking up on the lingering scent of Conrad's presence and finding it intolerable. I reflexively touched the back of my neck, smoothing the patch back into place. Yes, a temporary mark. Jameson's face twisted into something ugly, his voice dropping to a sharp, cold register. Why would you let Conrad Russell mark you? I thought you two were just playing house. You actually let him touch you? I frowned. Honestly, even though he was aware of the nature of my arrangement with Conrad, the question felt like a gross overstep. Even if it's an arrangement, he is my legal spouse. It's perfectly normal for him to provide a temporary mark during my heat. Under the circumstances, did you expect me to go find some other alpha to do the job? Jameson's knuckles whitened as he gripped the desk. I didn't mean it like that. My apologies, I was out of line. I didn't give him the satisfaction of dwelling on it. I steered the conversation back to the business plan. When we finished, he stopped me before I could leave. Any other questions? I asked. No, Jameson replied, his features softening back into his usual polished mask. Just, you weren't very fair last night, were you? You spent the whole evening paired off, leaving me to fend for myself at the gala. You owe me a dinner. That was true, and having accepted his help, common courtesy dictated that I show proper gratitude. I nodded. Fine, it's a date. When I got home that evening, I was stunned. My bedroom was unrecognizable. The ceiling had been gutted, the bed was a heap of splintered wood, and every visible surface was coated in a thick, choking layer of drywall dust. It was a total disaster zone. It looked like it had been hit by a wrecking ball. Not even a burglar would have bothered to make this much of a mess. I turned slowly to look at the man standing beside me, arms folded, trying his best to look nonchalant. Look, it's like this, Conrad said, clearing his throat. Your ceiling had a leak. I called a guy to fix it, but he lost his footing and crushed your bed frame. He was so worried I'd make him pay for it that he just ran off while I wasn't looking. He gestured vaguely at the ruin. It was an emergency, and I didn't have time to get a cleaning crew in here before you got back. So, yeah, this is what we've got. The corner of my mouth twitched. A 3,000 square foot luxury condo, and he expected me to believe the ceiling had a leak? I'm dying. Ever since the Alpha realized his Omega didn't want anyone else around, he's been losing his mind with joy. He literally hired someone just to tear the room apart. That bed cost thousands, and he didn't even blink. Tearing a room down is nothing. If it meant getting his Omega to sleep in his bed, he'd probably demolish the whole building. I don't know if this is a reward or a punishment. Having Piers sleep next to him, he's going to be fighting his own instincts all night. This is going to be painful. Doge-face.jpg. Forget fighting it, he's going to explode. If he wanted me to move into the master suite, he could have just asked. Why go through the effort of destroying a room? The overhead cost alone was absurd. What a waste. I took a deep breath and kept my smile firmly in place. So, where am I supposed to sleep then? Conrad's eyes lit up. He took a wide step to the left, revealing the open door to the master bedroom. If you don't mind, would you like to share? I shut the door to the guest room without a word, out of sight, out of mind, and walked toward the master bedroom. Conrad had clearly been prepared. The bedding had been swapped for my favorite gilded silk, my pajamas were neatly folded on the mattress, and my clothes were hanging perfectly in the walk-in closet. Even my tablet was waiting on the nightstand, exactly where I liked it. It was as if I'd been living here for months. Well, this was definitely premeditated. I couldn't help but laugh at the sheer absurdity of it, and I agreed to stay. When we climbed into bed that night, Conrad kept a stiff, one-arm-length distance between us. As the hours passed, he shifted in his sleep a few times, until the gap was small enough that I could feel the heat radiating off his skin. I could reach out and touch him without even stretching. Conrad didn't dare move closer. He lay there as rigid as a nervous groom on his wedding night. I turned on my side, my nose brushing against his warm skin. Conrad. Yeah? I tilted my head down, exposing my unprotected nape. My scent glands are itching. Rub them for me. The arm pressed against me went taut. Conrad's throat bobbed, and he slowly turned to face me. He lifted an arm, wrapping it around my back, his touch cautious and feather-light as he kneaded the skin near my glands. He was practically pinning me in a half-embrace. Is the pressure okay? He asked. The sensation was so good my eyes fluttered shut and my limbs went limp. After a few minutes of bliss, I nudged my head against his chest. "Release some of your pheromones." He hesitated. I'm still in my heat, Conrad. Your scent helps me stay calm." Conrad had no choice but to comply. He let his pheromones bleed out slowly, and I was soon enveloped by his steady, grounding presence. To make it easier for him, I shifted and rested my head on his other arm. "Don't stop," I murmured. "Keep going." "Right. I am officially bowing down to our legend. Pierce is at a whole new level of domestic manipulation. He's seducing him. That is 100% intentional seduction. Look at what he's turned that alpha into." They were right. It was seduction. If I wanted something, there wasn't a man alive who could resist me. But pacing was key. I didn't want to push too hard, too fast. After 10 more minutes of his careful ministrations, I nestled deep into his arms and drifted off to sleep. I have officially moved into Conrad Russell's master bedroom. Lately, the man has been acting like he has a split personality. In public, he maintains that icy, unapproachable, high-status exterior. But the moment we're through the front door, he's a completely different person. He's like a noble, prideful wolf king who suddenly morphed into a needy golden retriever. Not only is he constantly grinning like an idiot, but he's also become incredibly talkative. Most importantly, he's become insufferably clingy. He follows me everywhere, practically hovering over me even when I'm just trying to shower. At night, he spends every waking second testing my boundaries. Once he realized I didn't have an aversion to physical touch, he slowly escalated from sleeping near me to pressed against me, eventually moving to accidentally cuddling me while pretending to be asleep. He loves the big spoon position, his arm hooked around my waist, his nose nuzzling against my scent glands. He treats me like a literal body pillow. I've been humoring him. But the livestream comments were right. I honestly can't tell if this is a reward or a form of torture for him. The number of times he gets out of bed every night is increasing. The man seems to have a self-sabotaging streak. Every time he jumps into a cold shower to cool off, he warms back up, curls up at the edge of the bed, can't handle the urge to hold me, and ends up back in the shower. It was a never-ending cycle. After a week of this, I finally reached my limit. At 2 a.m, as he was about to climb out of bed yet again, I pinned him down and crawled on top of him. "Do you ever plan on letting me sleep?" Conrad let out a low, gravelly groan. He looked completely wrung out. You should get off me first." "No. If I don't finish this for you, I'm not getting a wink of sleep tonight." I took matters into my own hands. Conrad went rigid, his entire body tensed like a bowstring. 20 minutes later, I regretted it. I collapsed onto my side, numb and exhausted, fighting the urge to kick him off the bed. I turned my back to him, cold and detached. "Go take another shower." I sounded like the ultimate heartless jerk. But Conrad, having gotten a taste of the sweetness, wouldn't back down. He crawled back over, nuzzling my earlobe and catching my hand, acting all pathetic and needy. "Pierce, please, help me again." "No." "Just once more." "Absolutely not." "Darling, just once. I'm really struggling here. I'm begging you." I just stared at him. Alpha's promises are as hollow as a ghost's vow. He said, "Just once," but that turned into a daily routine.
I thought my hand was going to fall off.
One night, when he had the audacity to beg for a second round, I finally snapped and kicked him right off the bed. "Solve it yourself. Otherwise, go sleep on the sofa." Conrad scurried off to the bathroom, looking like a kicked puppy. Just as I was about to finally close my eyes and drift off, the phone he'd left on the nightstand lit up. A message popped up on the lock screen. "Conrad, I'm flying back tomorrow. Will you come pick me up?" So, the unattainable first love is coming home. I pretended not to hear a thing, rolled over, and went back to sleep. The next morning, as I was heading out, I told Conrad Russell that I had a business dinner and would be home late. He took my hand, his fingers lingering as he helped me adjust my watch. "Fair enough. I'm picking someone up as well, so I'll be back late." It had to be the first love. I didn't press for details, just nodded and headed for the door. Wait. What? Conrad gestured toward his own lips. The goodbye kiss. You agreed to it yesterday. We'd made a bet on the performance of a tech stock. If he won, I had to give him a goodbye kiss every morning before I left for the day. If I won, he had to do a lap around the building in nothing but bright red boxers. He'd won by a hair. Fine. A deal's a deal. I walked over, grabbed his tie, and leaned in to peck his lips. Feeling like I'd let him off too easily, I nipped at his lower lip as a parting shot, one brow arched in a challenge. There. That's your goodbye kiss. I turned to leave, but before I could take a step, he shoved me hard against the wall. One of his hands braced against the back of my head, the other locked into mine, fingers interlaced and squeezed so tight my knuckles turned white. He pried my mouth open with a raw, possessive hunger, claiming me with an intensity that took my breath away. My tongue was tingling when he finally pulled back, his breathing ragged, his eyes burning with something feral. That's the goodbye kiss I actually wanted. My evening business dinner was cancelled at the last minute due to a scheduling conflict. On a whim, I decided to take Jameson Ford out for the dinner I'd owed him for a while. I chose a place that was tucked away, exclusive, and undeniably chic. It was purely a coincidence, then, that I ran into Conrad Russell there. Sitting across from him was a delicate-looking man with pale, translucent skin. He was beaming, chattering away at Conrad. He seemed to think the table was too much of a barrier, leaning in closer and closer until he was practically fused to Conrad's side. I supposed this must be the unattainable first love Conrad had been so hung up on before our marriage. I rubbed my thumb over my knuckles, narrowing my eyes. Damn, this is a total train wreck. They're definitely going to fight. Hey, you! Stop looking at your phone and look up. Your husband is right there. No, please. It's been so sweet lately. Don't start the angst now. Little Pierce, don't get the wrong idea. That's just the son of the lead's old mentor. He's only there because Conrad was being polite and picking him up. That's not his first love. Conrad has only ever had eyes for you. I hate these if only they spoke up plot lines. It's giving me heartburn. When will he finally realize the house is full of photos of him hidden in the study? Can we fast forward to the confession already? Conrad's first love? Is me? Before I could process that, Conrad's peripheral vision finally caught me. He shot to his feet, so abruptly that he nearly clipped the other man's nose. Pierce, what are you doing here? Have you eaten yet? Didn't you say you had a dinner engagement? Conrad froze, his gaze shifting to the space behind me with sudden, sharp suspicion. Jameson had finished parking and caught up to my side. In an instant, 4 pairs of eyes locked. The atmosphere turned suffocatingly thick. Nobody spoke. Finally, the delicate-looking man broke the silence. Conrad, who is this? At that, Conrad slid over to me, arm wrapping possessively around my waist. He gave Jameson a mocking, territorial look before turning to the man with a smug, triumphant grin. This is Pierce Cunningham, the head of the Cunningham Group, my wife. I glanced at him, deadpan. I don't know what he thought he saw in my expression, but he corrected himself instantly. Oh, my husband. This is Evan Gordon, the son of my old mentor, Conrad explained, his voice losing its edge. He just got back into the country today. The professor has an academic conference tonight, so he asked me to pick him up. Conrad swept a glance toward Jameson, fast as a whip. I thought you had a business dinner tonight. How did you end up free? The client had a last-minute emergency, so I took Jameson out instead. I hadn't had a chance to thank him properly for all his help lately. I gave Evan a polite nod. We'll leave you two to your meal. Come on, Jameson. Let's head to the other table. Wait. Conrad grabbed my hand, looking like he was facing an invasion. That's perfect. I haven't thanked Mr. Ford for helping you out either. It's only right that I host. He turned to Jameson. Mr. Ford, you don't mind, do you? When Conrad said Mr. Ford, his tone spiked upward, dripping with a very specific, biting kind of sarcasm. Jameson offered a tight, forced smile. Of course not. The dinner was a masterclass in tension. Conrad Russell couldn't keep his hands off me. He spent the entire meal piling food onto my plate, clinging to me with an intensity that made the air feel thin. Across the table, Evan Gordon and Jameson Ford looked like they were swallowing glass. Jameson at least maintained a veneer of professional composure, though the faint pulse of a vein in his temple betrayed his irritation. But Evan, an Omega, had no such restraint. He sat there grinding his teeth, shooting daggers at the way Conrad's arm was pressed flush against mine, looking as if he were seconds away from a public meltdown. When the meal finally wound down, Jameson stepped out for a cigarette, and Conrad excused himself to the restroom. That was when Evan dropped the act. He leaned in, his voice dripping with venom. "Pierce Cunningham, right? I shot him a cold, bored look. Memory issues? Or just desperate for attention?" Evan choked on his retort, his face flushing a mottled red, as he forced himself to stay seated. "I heard Conrad only married you when the Cunningham family was on the verge of bankruptcy. Before that, I'd never even heard your name. I know how these high society arrangements work, all smiles for the cameras, total strangers behind closed doors. Am I wrong?" I offered him a thin, dangerous smile, gesturing for him to continue. "Since you've managed to latch onto the Russell name, don't play the fool," he hissed. "Conrad is in love with me. He only married you because I'd been living overseas for too long and he wanted to make me jealous. You got your payout. Don't be a clingy mess. It's embarrassing, don't you think?" I caught a glimpse of the livestream comments scrolling past an absolute frenzy of insults and gossip, and couldn't help but laugh out loud. "What's so funny?" Evan snapped, his poise finally shattering. "Nothing! I'm just watching a grasshopper try to jump over its own shadow." He opened his mouth to spit out another insult, but caught sight of Conrad walking back toward us and snapped his jaw shut, glaring at the floor. As we headed for the exit, Conrad went to pull the car around. Evan, emboldened by a shred of hope, tried to trot after him, no doubt aiming for the front seat. I ignored the drama entirely, turning instead to Jameson. "I'm sorry, Jameson. Today didn't go quite as planned. I'll make it up to you with a proper dinner, just the three of us, some other time." Jameson crushed his cigarette under his heel. "Don't apologize to me." His gaze shifted, locking onto mine with a sharp, heavy intensity that made my skin crawl. "But next time we eat, can we leave Conrad at home?" He stepped closer, invading my personal space. "Just you and me. How does that sound?" I didn't blink. I took a deliberate step back, widening the gap between us until his presence no longer felt like a threat. My expression remained neutral. "Jameson, I need you to be very clear on this. I see you as a business associate and nothing more. If you have any illusions about us being something else, then I think it's best we stop seeing each other entirely. I've always kept my professional and personal lives in ironclad silos. Jameson might have helped me with the firm, but he'd already been paid back in dividends. This was a contract, nothing more. I didn't owe him a second of my loyalty." Jameson's face hardened, his eyes turning cold and dark. Conrad pulled the car up to the curb and gave a short, sharp honk to signal me. I offered Jameson a polite nod of dismissal and slid into the passenger seat. In the back, I could see Evan tying his sleeves into knots, vibrating with silent, impotent rage. The live stream chat exploded in the corner of my vision. LMAO, look at that! He tried to claim the front seat to assert his dominance, but Conrad dumped him in the back the second he tried to sit down. Savage. The front seat is the husband's seat. When the spouse is present, that spot is off limits to everyone else. Conrad has his priorities straight. It's a power move. He's closing the door on any misunderstandings before they even start. I don't know. Don't forget the lead saw them having dinner together. That guy definitely said something sketchy to provoke him. Pierce isn't saying anything, but he's definitely holding a grudge. If this goes the usual route, they're going to hold it in until it turns into a massive, tear-jerking fight. A fight? Not likely. But there were definitely a few things I needed to clarify with Conrad. After dropping Evan Gordon off at his mentor's place, we headed home. While Conrad was in the shower, I made a beeline for the study. I went straight for the cabinet with the keypad lock. After a moment's thought, I entered the most cliché combination imaginable: my birthday. The lock clicked open instantly. I couldn't help but chuckle. So predictable. I pulled out a heavy leather envelope and tipped it over, sending a cascade of photos fluttering across the mahogany desk. It was exactly as the live stream comments had predicted. I was the star of every single one. Interviews, press conferences, mundane grocery runs. The oldest ones dated all the way back to our high school days. The pile was dense, an absolute mountain of paper. Conrad, had he really been nursing a crush on me for that long? It made sense now why he'd agreed to our arranged marriage so readily, and why he'd gone so deathly silent when I first slapped the prenuptial agreement on the table. Even knowing I viewed the union as a purely transactional benefit, he hadn't hesitated. He'd shown superhuman restraint, never once overstepping boundaries in my private life. And the moment he mistakenly thought I was interested in Jameson Ford, he'd prepared himself to walk away, keeping his distance to avoid being a nuisance. The man was a total idiot. A warm, aching sensation bloomed in my chest. I carefully packed the photos back into the envelope and locked them away. I was back in the living room just as Conrad finished his shower. I locked eyes with him and said, "We need to talk." Conrad swallowed hard, looking genuinely rattled as he crossed the room. "Talk? About what?" "That Omega today. He's really just my mentor's son. We aren't even close. If his father hadn't specifically asked me to check on him, I wouldn't have even given him the time of day." Conrad immediately pulled up his text history with Nixon Gordon, practically shoved his phone into my hands, and waited with bated breath for me to audit his life. I'd heard of his mentor, a titan in the finance world, and Conrad was his prized protege. I gave the texts a cursory glance and tossed the phone onto the cushion. "That's fine, but he told me you two were the real soulmates. He said this marriage was just a front to make him jealous, and he told me to be sensible and hand you over." Conrad's eyes went wide. He looked like he'd just seen a man streak through the middle of a formal gala. After a second of processing, he didn't just stand there, he actually dropped to his knees, a heavy, resounding thud against the carpet. "Slander! Absolute bottom-of-the-barrel slander!" He held up 3 fingers, his face as solemn as a soldier swearing an oath. "God as my witness, I have no feelings for Evan Gordon. If I'm lying, strike me down right here." He was so earnest it was ridiculous. I burst out laughing and grabbed his shoulders to haul him up. "You don't have to swear on your future lineage, Conrad. That's a bit much." He looked panicked. "I don't have a shred of interest in him. The only person I've ever liked is, I leaned in, closing the distance until our lips were mere millimeters apart, breathing a provocative, teasing puff of air against his skin. "And who is that?" Conrad's gaze darkened. "You, Pierce Cunningham." It was the first time he'd said it so plainly. We'd been intimate enough lately, but it had always been a series of unspoken impulses. No one had dared to cross the threshold into a verbal confession. Conrad leaned in to claim my lips. Just as we were about to touch, I pulled back with a wicked, cool indifference. "Oh." Conrad froze, blinking at me in total bewilderment. "Oh, that's it?" I fought back a smirk, keeping my expression icy. "That's it. I'm heading to my room." I hadn't even taken a single step when he surged up, scooped me off my feet, and tossed me onto the sofa. He pinned my wrists above my head, his body radiating a dangerous, scorching heat. "Oh, really? Playing games with me?" I cracked, letting out a laugh as I gave his shoulder a sharp kick. All right, cut it out. Let me up." Not a chance. A second later, his lips crashed onto mine, firm and hungry, prying my teeth apart. I was forced to arch my back, drowning in the intensity of his kiss. The temperature in the room climbed, the air thick and heavy enough to burn. "Well, looks like I'm not getting any work done tonight." As the lights flickered out, the live stream comments were having a field day. Finally, a man who actually uses his mouth to communicate instead of brooding. I've been waiting for a show where the misunderstanding gets nuked on the spot. This is so sweet, I'm going to die. Ever since we laid our cards on the table, Conrad Russell has become increasingly impossible. He's like a husky, perpetually in heat. He wants a kiss the moment he wakes up, and a hug every time he brushes his teeth. Every single time he stirs up a fire he can't put out, he turns into this pitiful, aggrieved creature, begging me to extinguish it for him. The stamina and sheer endurance of an alpha are downright criminal. My wrists are practically screaming, and the back of my neck is raw from his constant biting. If he ever fully marks me, there's no telling if I'll actually survive the ordeal. Better to put that off as long as possible. Evan Gordon hasn't stopped pestering me lately, either. He keeps flooding my phone with texts and calls, but Conrad avoids him like the plague. That was until Conrad's mentor reached out, requesting a group dinner. Conrad buried his face in the crook of my neck, his voice muffled and hesitant. "Honey, I really can't say no to him." "Why don't you come with me?" I rubbed my sore, throbbing wrists and shook my head. "Can't. I have a dinner with Jameson Ford tonight." "You'll have to go on your own. It's that guy with the last name Ford again," Conrad grumbled, his annoyance bubbling over. "Why won't he just give up? He's been trying to move in on my territory for ages. I've hated his guts for a long time." He pulled me closer, his voice dropping to a low growl. "Why don't you just cut him out of the loop? I can cover whatever funding gap he leaves behind." I shot him a sharp look. "It's a binding contract, Conrad." "It's not as simple as you think. Besides, we've already talked it out. He's heading to Switzerland soon to expand his business. This is just a goodbye dinner." Conrad slumped against me, rocking back and forth while clutching my waist like a needy spouse. I'm jealous, though. I felt a familiar, insistent pressure against my thigh and shoved him off, breathless and exasperated. Just die of jealousy, then. Jameson Ford had reserved a private dining suite. By the time I arrived, he'd already been waiting for a while. Ever since I'd made it clear that I only viewed him as a friend, we hadn't seen much of each other. Today, however, his usual easygoing, gentle demeanor was gone, replaced by a sharp, aggressive intensity. But then again, there are few truly gentle souls in the world of high-stakes finance. Most are just wolves, wearing expensive cashmere. We made small talk over the meal. "When's your flight?" "The day after tomorrow." "The new expansion in Switzerland is going to be grueling, but if anyone can pull it off, it's you. Best of luck. I'll hold you to that." After the pleasantries died down, he steered the conversation toward me. "Pierce, are you in love with Conrad Russell?" My hand paused mid-air. "Yes." "What exactly do you like about him?" "Jameson," I said, setting my chopsticks down and meeting his gaze squarely. "Whatever I like about him is none of your business. I don't care for people digging into my private life." He broke character completely, relentless and unhinged. "I just don't get it. Where exactly do I fall short? When you were at your lowest, I was the one who fronted the capital to save your company. A third of the projects Cunningham Group has taken on recently were brokered by me. I've done so much for you. Why him? Where did I lose?" Jameson kept firing questions, his face twisting with resentment and a jagged, obsessive fixation. The warmth he'd once feigned was gone, replaced by a cold, predatory malice. I frowned. "Jameson, that's not how this works. Investing in my firm was a business transaction. You provided the capital, I provided the dividends. That's a fair trade. You did bring in clients, and I'm grateful for that, but you profited from it too, didn't you? You're a brilliant business partner, but that is where the line is drawn. If you want to move this into the territory of personal feelings, then I'm afraid our partnership ends here." Jameson's face went black with rage. His eyes, cold and reptilian, locked onto mine as he finally shredded his mask. He let out a dry, chilling laugh. "Pierce, you don't get to decide when things end. Honestly, I don't care who you think you love. You're a spirited one, wild, an omega with more backbone than most alphas I know. But what if you were kept? What if I ground that spirit down, clipped your wings, and locked you in a room where the only person you ever saw was me? Where I'm the only one who can save you when you're in heat? Even if you love Conrad, what would it matter then? I'd be your only option." His words made my skin crawl. A wave of physical nausea washed over me. I realized I had never actually known this man at all. "Pierce, you haven't been fully marked by Conrad yet, have you?" "What are you talking about? Don't you feel a little warm?" "I can smell your pheromones." My blood turned to ice. Only then did I realize a fever was spiking in my veins. My pheromones were leaking, completely beyond my control. But it wasn't time for my heat. I looked sharply at the wine glass I'd been drinking from. You drugged it? A horrifying realization hit me. The charity gala, back when my heat had arrived out of nowhere, I had drank the water in his car that night too. That was you, wasn't it? Back then? Jameson watched my distress with the detached grace of a predator, calmly slicing his steak. Yes. You were supposed to be my Omega 2 months ago. I didn't expect that Russell fellow to trail you like a lost puppy. He's such a nuisance, always ruining my plans. But no matter. If it doesn't work the first time, we just try again. Look, I've succeeded, haven't I? I really should thank Evan Gordon. If he hadn't kept Conrad busy, I never would have gotten this opportunity. The man was insane. I bit my lip until I tasted copper, desperate to use the sharp sting of pain to keep my mind clear. I stumbled toward the door, but it was locked from the outside. I slammed my fist against the wood, but there was no answer. I've booked out this entire lounge, Pierce. No one is coming. My dear, I suggest you save your strength. You'll need it for when I mark you. My chest heaved. I was gasping for air. The situation was dire. Jameson rose slowly, stepped toward me, and tilted my chin up, his eyes filled with a sickly, possessive adoration. It's all right, Pierce. Being with me won't be any worse than being with Conrad. I'll make sure your first time is memorable. He leaned in to kiss me. I didn't hold back. I drove my heel directly into his crotch. As he doubled over in agony, I snatched a wine bottle from the sideboard and brought it down hard on his skull. The glass shattered. Shards flew everywhere. Jameson staggered back, clutching the table for support, blood streaming down his face and blurring his vision. I grabbed a jagged neck of the bottle, holding it like a weapon, and sneered. Is that so? Because I'm finding this version of you quite satisfactory. Damn it, you really are a wild one. Jameson wiped the blood from his eyes, his expression distorted with rage as he lunged for me. I tried to strike with the broken glass, but he caught my wrist, pinning it in a grip of iron. Trying to pull that twice? I'm not that stupid. The physical disparity between an alpha and an omega is a cruel reality. Even with my build, I was no match for him, especially while drugged. My limbs felt heavy, and my vision began to swim in dark, swirling patches. I wouldn't let him do this. Not like this. I was reaching for another shard of glass on the floor when the door was suddenly kicked off its hinges with a thunderous crash. The pressure on my wrist vanished. Through the haze, I saw Jameson being yanked up by his collar and sent flying into the wall. A flurry of blows followed a brutal, precise beating that ended with him being slammed onto the table, unconscious before he even hit the wood. Conrad? I was pulled into a pair of arms. They were shaking. I've got you, Pierce. You're all right. I'm taking you home. We're going home right now. I'm burning up. God, I'm miserable. I lay in our bed, my entire body incinerating, every bone in my frame aching with a searing, marrow-deep heat. Conrad Russell. Conrad. I'm here. I'm right here. His voice drifted against my ear, grounding me. Just hold on. It'll be over soon. As he flooded my scent gland with a heavy dose of his pheromones, I gripped the arm wrapped around my waist, a ragged moan tearing through my throat. My body had turned to liquid, boneless and desperate. How is it? Do you feel better? Pierce? Pierce, look at me. The temporary mark was like a drop of water in an endless drought. The fever ebbed for a heartbeat, only to roar back like a tidal wave pulling me under. My hunger for his pheromones was absolute and insatiable, primal craving. I wanted to be drowned in them, drenched from head to toe until there was nothing left of me but his scent. I collapsed against Conrad's chest. It's not working, I gasped. That wine, I drank too much of it. Conrad, give me the permanent mark. I hauled myself up, desperate to find his lips, demanding the bond. His hand tightened like a vice around my waist. Pierce, are you absolutely sure? Yes. Once the permanent bond is sealed, there's no turning back. You'll never be able to leave me. I pressed against him, delirious, my body instinctively rubbing against his. Just do it. He grabbed the nape of my neck, forcing me to meet his gaze. Pierce, say it again. Who am I? God. He was infuriating. Was there no end to his stalling? My temper flared through the haze. I grabbed his wrist and sank my teeth into the skin, channeling every ounce of my remaining strength into the bite as I lashed out. Are you sick in the head? We're already married. You're dithering over a permanent mark? If you're not willing, then get out. Just let me burn to death. The world spun. In a heartbeat, he slammed me into the mattress, his weight pinning me down, effectively silencing my protests. I'd always known Conrad had a stamina that was honestly terrifying, but witnessing it firsthand, still terrifying. While my heat had come on like a tidal wave, and I'd certainly needed his soothing presence, he was being an absolute animal. I hadn't stepped out of bed for 3 straight days. My entire body, the sheets, the very air in the room, everything was soaked in the heavy, cloying scent of our mingled pheromones. I collapsed into his arms, utterly spent, letting him wash the sweat and exhaustion from my skin. What about Jameson? I rasped. Conrad bowed his head, pressing a soft kiss to my temple. Heartless, you ask about another man the second we're done? Do you have no conscience? I'm just worried you beat him so badly you'll end up in prison, and I'll be left a widow. My lips were pecked again. Relax, I know what I'm doing. He pulled me tighter. He's in rough shape, sure, but attempting to assault an Omega, especially a married one, is a serious felony. With the evidence I have, he's not getting out of prison anytime soon. He knew what he was doing, my foot. At the time, he'd clearly been trying to beat the man into the afterlife. It was a miracle Jameson was still breathing. I let out a long, shaky sigh. I never imagined he was like that. He always played the part of the refined gentleman so well. Even the live stream comments hadn't realized how twisted he was. When things went south, they were more frantic than anyone. It was like they were ready to jump through the screen and finish him off themselves. And then there's Evan. Conrad continued. My investigators confirmed he and Jameson were working together. I've already handed the evidence to Nixon. Evan's been locked away in seclusion, and I won't be letting you see him again. He tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. I'm just glad I got there in time. If I hadn't, the thought is unbearable. I was pulled back into his crushing embrace. The moment I'd sensed something was wrong that day, I'd surreptitiously sent Conrad my location and muted my phone, leaving the line open. He'd heard every word Jameson said. He'd arrived within 10 minutes, and looking at the speed he must have been driving, he'd blown through every red light in the city. His license was currently sitting with the precinct, and the great CEO was going to have to retake his driver's theory test. I turned in his arms, wrapping mine around his neck, and pressed a soft kiss to the corner of his eye. Yeah, I'm lucky to have you. I held him lazily, the warmth of his skin grounding me. My heart felt swollen, like something was about to spill over. It was rare to find a moment of peace like this, but after a few moments, I felt his body shift again. I stiffened. No way! Absolutely not! I can't handle any more. He ignored me completely, sweeping me up and tossing me back onto the bed, nuzzling into my neck like a giant, overexcited retriever. Darling baby, let's have kids, he whispered against my skin. Conrad, are you listening? My back is going to snap. We'll have 2. One takes your last name, one takes mine. You pick the names. I'll love whatever you choose. Are you on something? Are you actually not tired? My mouth was silenced by a kiss. You're my only medicine. We hadn't even bothered to draw the curtains. The sunlight spilled across the bed, fracturing into a million tiny diamonds in Conrad's eyes. I gave up and pulled him closer. Fine. I chose this, Alpha. I guess I'll have to spoil him. The live stream comments, however, were feeling particularly bitter. What is it that the esteemed VIPs can't see? You've had the screen blacked out for 3 days. Is this even reasonable? If you're not going to show us, at least let us hear something. I've been waiting for ages for them to finally get together, and this is all I get? Can someone just tell me how many times they hooked up in the original source material? To the guy above, the original source material just has 6 dots. That's it. This trash platform is the worst. Give me my money back. Refund.